Hello everyone and welcome back to the next episode of the Road to FIDE Masters series, in which I will cover round number 7 from the Santa Semana Open in Alicante, during which I got paired against Omar Garcia Blanco from Spain, a FIDE master rated nearly 2400. He once was rated over that rating barrier, let's say, so he knows what chess is about. But I felt like this game will be a good one from me, since I was on the high wave, let's say, of winning and not losing the games for the past few days. And also my opponent was quite an easy one to prepare against because his repertoire was rather narrow. Did it work out? Let's see. I decided to start with the e4, and Sicilian defense was no surprise to me. Neither was the e6 variation that my opponent chose. However, a little bit of the surprise was the fact that in here, after queen c7 a3, once more the system which I very much like, especially after the win in the round number 5, my opponent went with a6. I believe that in the past he did not choose this line, but thankfully I was prepared against this line nevertheless, because after a6 bishop e3, I was still expecting knight f6 to be played as my opponent used to play in the past on the move number 6 or 7. However, at this point he went with b5 move. It's not like it's superior or worse position and variation to knight f6, is just a different one. After knight takes c6, queen took the knight, and this variation actually was the one I was the least familiar with, but I knew that the idea now for me as white is to play bishop e2, because the queen's placements allow me to sometimes have e5 bishop f3 possibilities, and I was hoping to do just that. After bishop b7 castle, I believed that the main move in here was to play rook c8, because after rook c8, if I go with the queen to, let's say, d4, the idea for black usually is to develop the knight first to block the diagonal, and then try to play bishop c5, basically exchanging both the queens and the dark squared bishops on the c5, and then claiming that the endgame is equal. So that would be the one scenario for black. Also, if I played queen d2, I believed the line to be knight f6 followed by b4. So once more making use of this dark squared bishop, aiming at my queen. But to my surprise, instead of rook c8, bishop d6 was the move that was played. It was not in my notes because my notes were not that extended, let's say. But at the same time, I didn't want to make a mistake from the round number 1, in which, as you remember, I focused so much on my notes and I trusted them so much that I got myself into the strange and bad situation. If you don't know what I mean, please check out the first episode from this tournament. So my point is that even though it was not in my notes, I approached this move as a good one, and I wanted to figure out what is it for. And I believe I did, and it made me happy a little bit, because I felt like if after rook c8 there is a possibility of playing bishop c5 and exchanging the bishop, perhaps my opponent is willing to develop the bishop in such a strange manner, especially after queen on d4 is placed, to exchange the dark squared bishop like that. So I felt like it might be the only upside to this maneuver, to this move in general, but I was happy with that because it's just so many moves to exchange the bishops, when after rook c8 it's faster. So even though I kind of got the idea behind this move, I undervalued it and I felt like it's not that great. So I decided to just simply continue with what I wanted to do anyway. So I played queen d4, hitting the pawn, knight f6, rook a to d1, developing the piece, hitting the bishop, bishop b8 as expected. And in here I chose bishop f3. As I've said from the beginning, this was my idea from the very beginning, because e5 is coming. If my opponent wants to stop it with e5 move himself, then he might have some difficulties, because after queen b4 he might be unable to castle. So basically the only way to stop any problems to occur for my opponent, he had to play queen c7 with the checkmate threat, so that I have to play g3, and now it's time for my opponent to do what he wants. And as I've said, he wanted to play bishop a7. So kind of a strange way to exchange those bishops, because if you will see at this position, and let's say at this one, for example, you can tell that comparing those two situations in the main line, let's say, I feel like black is much better and more developed. In here, I developed quite a bit with the bishop, with the rook. I have some g3 move on the board. Okay, it might not be that important, but still, while opponent chose this strange maneuver. So I felt quite alright, especially after the exchange. E5 was played as expected to try to block my bishop and block my e5 possibility. So the following moves felt natural. I decided to not do anything fancy yet. So I just played rook d2, and after castling rook f2 d1 and rook f2 e8, I've believed that this is the critical moment for me, because until move number 10 I was following the opening theory. Then I got surprised, I figured out what's going on, and I reacted, I believed, and I still believe rather well. And in here the question is, how should I continue? So the more I looked into the position, I felt like the less opponent has to offer in here, because I took control over the d5 square so well that d5 move will never be played on the board. If that's the case, d6 is not that appealing either, because my double stacked rooks makes this d pawn a weak one overall, so moving it just by one square makes no sense. I also have the b4 covered, the a5 covered, because after a5 the pawn is hanging, b4 the pawn is hanging, so no breakthroughs from my opponent. Also his pieces are coordinated not so well, so I felt like there is no danger in the short notice and also even longer one. So at the same time though, I don't have a clear target in the center of the board. Okay, I hit the pawn, but as of now it's well protected. So if that's the case, I focused more on the defender, and I felt like, okay, maybe since I have so much control over the center of the board, I can try to play something on the king side and go for the initiative on the side of the board, as you usually do when you have controlled the center. So I played move g4, which I'm very proud of, and my opponent already have some questions to be answered. For example, does he want to play h6, kind of weakening the king, or will he deal with this d-pawn problem differently, right? Indeed, he decided to play h6, and in here I had plenty of choices, out of which I chose the quietest one, which is king h1. I didn't want to tell my opponent whether or not I am willing to push h pawn and then take with the pawn, or am I willing to stay with the pawn as it is and then only push g pawn and then try to take the pawn with either rook or the queen. Also, I wanted to see what my opponent is planning on doing. So it was a cheeky attempt, let's say, to delay my attack and see what's going on. And both g4 and king h1 were the moves I was very proud of, and I felt like I'm really having a good position here. Only to my surprise, after the game I spotted that at no point in the game computer evaluated my position as much better. In reality, in here, as you can tell, it's even black that is simply better. Why though, I have no idea, but it's the engine, let's say, evaluation. Human wise, I was optimistic. After the game, I spoke to my coach. He said that after g4 he was optimistic. I spoke to my colleagues. They asked me like how this attack did not come to a good end, to happy end. Well, it's because apparently this position is not so bad for black. And what's funnier, my opponent did not do anything on the king side. He played now some rook c8 move, mysterious one to me, to be honest. So yeah, I had the choice once more. Should I push like that or should I push like that? If my opponent didn't want to show me his intentions either, I decided, okay, now it's the time to attack. And I went with g5, takes. I decided that I would rather develop the pieces attack on the king side rather than pawn attack, because after queen d8 I have rook g1, and I'm optimistic, I am happy. After g6 I am basically choosing between good and even better, right? Because I felt like, okay, I might try to push the h pawn immediately, or if I don't like the fact that the king might escape the checkmate or whatever, I might be very precise and win the game like that. But the more I got thinking, the less I liked my position, in a sense that I'm winning. Because, for example, what I so thankful is that after h4 there are some possibilities like rook takes c3, bc, knight e4, and after takes, I was unsure whether or not I am still okay in this scenario, let's say, because this bishop seemed so powerful and my pawns seemed so uncoordinated. Obviously, I may have misplayed this position because, as you can tell, evaluation is favoring me. But yeah, at this point it was not right. So maybe opponent does not have to exchange the queens or what. But the case is that I saw such lines, and then I started to realize that my position is not as good as previously expected and evaluated by myself. Nevertheless, I was still optimistic, so I chose the move queen h6 so that I am going away from those tactical problems on e4, because then my queen would not be hit by the knight. My opponent replied with queen e7. I went with h4 as previously planned. He played queen f8. I went back, and I felt like this move now is the only way to go for my opponent. And the difference would be that in here my h5 move might be on the board, on the menu, because the queens are not looking at each other. And my opponent, to my surprise, went with king g7. And I was like, wait, what's going on? I felt like only queen to g7 might happen, and then I was happy with rook d6 and an idea of trying to make it play out like that. And I felt like I am the one putting pressure to the opponent. King g7 seemed wrong to me, because after h5, like, what is he going to do? But I've missed the idea completely. That's the problem. Why? Well, because I was expecting the queen, if it went like that, to continue the zigzag going on and to protect, as I've said, the position from the g7 square. And I completely missed the fact that my opponent can go to e7. And all of a sudden, it occurred to me that my position is no longer good anymore, because I am the one having more problems with my king than my opponent, due to tactical reasons. The obvious way for me to continue is h takes g6, which is nearly winning, right? Because if my opponent takes, I take, and this king is just miserable. But after check, king g2 and rook h6, I am unable to even claim the pawn advantage or whatever, because here I am now losing, right? That's the problem. So I have to run away with my king. So I played king f1, he took the pawn, I went away, he took, he played rook g8 to the open file, I went away with the king, he went away with the king, and all of a sudden, instead of me having the rook and the queen there, pushing on the g file, h file, and making black king a worse one, I don't have any more heavy piece on those files. My king is not better than the opponent's ones, and I felt like I am on the verge of not losing the game, but losing the initiative, and making my opponent's position better. So I really had to figure out what to do at this point, and I was angry at myself that I blew all the initiative that I've had. So only after the game I realized that my position was not so great from the objective standpoint view. So yeah, at least it was a little bit relieving, let's say. All right. Nevertheless, in here I had the decision to make. How can I continue, and how do I want to continue? A few moves back, I placed my queen on f5, thinking that it's a great piece, hitting the e5, hitting d7, f6, all that stuff. But when I looked at this position situation at this point, I felt like it's the worst piece in here. It makes no sense to stay there. I decided that I have to run away. It was dictated due to the fact that I was afraid of queen e6 idea. For example, if I played, I don't know, like king e2, queen e6 takes, this position is simply not so great to me, because this bishop is the attacking one, mine is the defending one. Opponent have the dark squares control, so he might be able to jump with the knight like that in the near future, or for example he can try to play like this, maneuver pieces like that. So I have the weakness, I have the weak piece, I have the weak square. So all in all, I felt like my pieces are strangled in a way, not coordinated so well, and if that's the case, I didn't want to go into such endgame, especially since I was approaching the time travel a little bit. So in here I decided against leaving the queen on f5 and I went with queen h3. After which my opponent activated his queen. I played queen h4, hitting the knight, protecting the e4. The rook g6 was on the board. And as of now, I was thinking only about drawing the game, to be honest, guys, because I felt like my chance is gone. And in the past, the most likely scenario in such instance would be that I would overpush such position, which is no longer better for me, and I would just simply lose the game because of that. But yeah, I just didn't want to make mistakes from my past, let's say. So I found the idea that was aimed at the weakness of the black king, because after queen h8, king e7, queen b8, I am kind of getting backdoor to his position. After bishop c6, which was kind of forced, I spotted that after b4, his queen is out of moves, and if he takes my knight, I can then deliver the perpetual, and that's all I cared about, to be honest. I just wanted to draw a game like that because strategically I felt like I am worse. As I've said, I am not that great coordinated as my opponent. I am hit at too many different points and pawns, so I wanted to achieve only a draw. And perhaps if I had a different mindset, I would find very simple tactic. What is it? Well, knight d5. I mean, checking the king, and if my opponent takes, now this connection is disrupted, so I can simply take the pawn in e5. If he goes away, I take the bishop and I have one more pawn. Okay, the dynamic is not so great in a sense that my bishop is still a bad one. So for example, after d6, I have to go somewhere with the queen. Maybe even such position is not that easily winning for me, but I mean, what am I risking here? Nothing. So perhaps exchanging queens would not be beneficial to him. Maybe he would have to deliver some check and then maybe play like this. So in here, sure, there are still some ways for me to blunder, but maybe I can play here and claim the draw like that by this repetition, not the other one I was hoping for. And if not, as I've said, I have one more pawn, right? So wrong mindset leads to wrong choices. I didn't even think for a second about knight d5, unfortunately. And so I went for b4. And the problem with this move, obviously, is that my opponent does not have to take the knight. He can simply deliver a check on c4. And after I recovered the check, I also was hoping to see such move on the board with the further exchanges. So I was calculating this, 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 and if the king goes that way, maybe I can perpetual him like this. If he goes f6, I have this check, king is weak. So this I calculated, but simple knight d5 I didn't because of the wrong mindset. But in here, instead of taking on e4 and making my life easier, my opponent went with queen e6, protecting the pawn for good, and approaching the time travel once more with the wrong mindset, wrong calculation. Yeah, I chose knight d5 now, which I don't quite understand, to be honest. I knew, because I practiced such scenarios during the training before tournament, that I don't have to force any matter in here. I felt like, okay, my king is not the greatest, but I felt like this would be too much of an attempt from white, and I should be surviving anyway, even if both heavy pieces will enter my first rank. But yeah, I somehow got scared even though I didn't have to, so I was considering move like this, for example, which would be perfectly normal. Hitting there, maybe checking, maybe going back with the queen, just continuing the game with equal situation. And yeah, but I went with knight d5. Why is it wrong? Because obviously opponent will take with the bishop, and after ed5 I only was looking at queen h3, king e2, some rook g1, and then I felt like, okay, this pawn is hanging, so he cannot do it, he has to play d6, and then I have rook c3, and maybe I am the one doing something, I will be first to attack him. So I calculated those lines, those, attack here, forgetting that chess is not only about attacking the kings straight away, it's also about strategic stuff, and I missed just queen d6 move. It's not like I undervalued it, underestimated, I just simply missed the possibility of playing there. And the problem is that if I exchange the pieces, now there is a scenario with a good knight against bad bishop. My pawn is attacked, fork is coming, so I am simply in a lost position. And if that's not happening and I want to avoid the queen trade, e4 is on the menu. So once more, simple fork. So in here I've made yet another tactical mistake. I'm not sure what was wrong with me for those past 3 to 5 moves, but apparently many things were wrong, because I played queen h8, which is by far the worst of all the, let's say, moves with the queen, because after e4 I thought that I can take, he can take, I can deliver the double attack, and I will claim the knight back, and I'm happy. But like, I forgot that the knight can just simply go back. So when missing such simple moves, I guess you cannot win a game or even draw a game at this level. So it happened to me. So yeah, queen h8 what happened, e4 takes, and queen h4 is not working, so I decided to switch the idea, play rook e3, you know, f5, maybe f3, but whatever, it makes no sense and difference. My opponent is winning regardless of what I will choose now, because I just simply got myself lost position. He played queen f3, queen f4, sorry, precisely protecting the knight, attacking my king. I went for a walk with the king, up, up, up the board, and at the very end of the walk, unfortunately I got mated, which you can expect right after such position. So yeah, for the second time in the tournament I allowed my opponent to checkmate me, and it was second loss of the tournament. Not so painful obviously as the first one against lower rated opponent, but especially during the game I was really angry at myself for the fact that I didn't convert my initiative for anything concrete. But after the game, I knew that there was nothing there, to be honest. And the other thing that I can be worried about, or mad at myself about, is this exact moment in which I had a knight d5 possibility. Whether or not it's a great one for me, it's debatable. Alright, we can argue. But the point is that I should at least consider it. I didn't. Then I misplayed the game completely by playing knight d5. Later, queen h8 as a follow-up. Complete tactical. I don't even know how to say it. So yeah, not happy with the result. The game was great until some point, so I would say that there are some lessons to be taken, and I will try to do that in the near future when analyzing this game deeper. But a loss is a loss, and the tournament rather, continues. 2 more rounds to go, and I will come back with those to you guys in the 2 following days. So if you want to watch them and not miss them out, please remember to subscribe the channel. And if you want to cheer me up after such a painful loss, always remember to leave a like. Thanks you all for watching until this point, and we'll see each other tomorrow. Thank you once more. Bye bye.